welcome to another episode of the Well Life Podcast, where we connect with experts around what we have determined to be the 8 dimensions of wellness.
Yeah, today we have on Adam Ross once again. He's a registered dietitian working with tons of different people right on their nutritional goals. We also work with him as well. We wanted to give kind of a big introduction and kind of a huge overview on nutrition and how to eat for your goals. So thanks for coming on, Adam.
Yeah, Adam, happy to have you back, man. On our first podcast, we really kind of talked generally about your services, how you help your clients, how you're partnering with us to kind of help our client base as well. I think it's a very informative podcast that we get to have today about kind of how people can think about affecting their nutrition for any goal they do have in the gym, right? Because I know as spring comes around, summer comes around, people might be cutting, right? I just came off of bulk. I don't know if I did it successfully, right?
I definitely did it successfully.
But it'd be good to give people an idea of thinking about their nutrition and how, if I'm coming into summer, if I think about one specific goal, I'm thinking about cutting, how should I be thinking about, right, my nutrition? I guess first, right, you can, if you want, give a little overview of AR Nutrition, but then we can jump into kind of how you think about just thinking about nutrition and goals.
Perfect. Yeah. No. So a quick little, the quick synopsis of AR Nutrition is, I'm an ex-athlete. Got into, I grew up in Western Canada, so I was born and raised in Western Canada, Alberta. There's really not much else to do besides you just start playing hockey. I was lucky enough. I ended up getting a Division I scholarship. Moved out around Boston. I was playing college hockey out there. Played professionally for a few years after, and then that's really when I got into nutrition. I started to essentially out of it. It was essential for me to improve my performance, right? So that's when I really got into it. It became a matter of like I was just unhappy with the way I was performing as an athlete, and I was trying to look for like that little bit of a competitive edge, and that's kind of where I found training and I found nutrition. And then over the course of my 4 years at college, and I played a couple of years professionally afterward, the nutrition and the training side of athletics just kind of really took over for me. And then when I decided to call it quits with hockey after what was a really fun career. It was awesome. I don't regret a minute of it. But then I decided to go back to school, become a registered dietitian. From there, I've been able to work with vast variety of people. I was a dietitian at St. John's University, so I kind of was able to work with the student-athlete population there. And then through starting my own private business, I've been able to work with literally just a little bit of everybody. So I've got mostly fitness-focused people. And everybody, essentially everybody's looking for the same thing. Everybody wants to look better, feel better, function better, perform better, no matter what it is, as a parent, as an athlete, as a friend, as a family member, at work, whatever it might be. I think everybody's just looking for that enhanced, well-being and physical function and performance, and that's kind of where I've. So it's easy because it kind of goes. At this point now, I've worked with so many different people. And no matter what their limitations are, or their age, or their abilities, or skills, or whatever, the goal's always the same. They just want to look better, feel better, function better, be healthier, be happier, that type of thing. So, that's kind of the direction that it's taken. So
cool. Yeah, everyone, right? The whole overview and the main direction of this podcast, right, is to give kind of directly applicable action items that people can apply right now, right? So everyone wants to cut nearing summer. Some people still, right, might want to bulk and put on size depending on the body type, where they're at in their lifting, workout kind of journey. And everyone, right, who's an athlete wants to perform better and be stronger. And it's funny, sometimes you see like the ideal athlete, right? It could be a Pete Alonso on the New York Mets that's a tank, but not lean by whatever means, right? Or it could be an NFL lineman that's incredibly fit and still a huge guy. Then you see people that are leaner and performing, people that are leaner and can't perform, right? So from a kind of an overall nutritional scope for someone, where would you start? Where would you give yourself that basis, and what would you start to do?
From overarching thing that I'm always going to kind of start with people is I just want to know about your food quality. Like that's kind of the big thing. I think no matter what, like no matter who we are, we can always do a little bit better with our food quality. And there will be a lot of people that, they want to track macros and they want to do this and they want to do that, and they've got 1,000 different things in their mind. But at the end of the day, they're really not just consistent with like what I used to call the basics, which I now call like the fundamentals of just like healthy eating, right? Or performance function eating is like, what is your food quality? Like, how consistently can you eat good food, and can you eat in alignment with your goals, right? And I think that's the big thing. So before we start intermittent fasting or counting macros or all these different things, I think it kind of does come down to that fundamental kind of just like, okay, like, what are you consuming? How often are you consuming it? How is your control of your hunger? How is your management of your energy levels and your sleep and things like that? So it's usually where I kind of start with people is like, get just a good grasp and a good idea of like, what are you actually doing every day, right? And from there, then we can start to build a plan, right? Because I think the worst thing that we can do is start whatever, try to go to level 100 from 0 on day 1, and you're never going to make it there, right? So what I like to do with people is figure out what's the level that we're starting at, and then we start to focus on those fundamental things like food quality, and then we start to build out some kind of a nutrition plan that's going to fit the scope of what they're going to be able to stay consistent with. And a lot of people think that has to be something that's perfect, and in all honesty, I've coached literally thousands of people at this point, and there's been no one that's been perfect. It just doesn't happen, right? So it's largely just about kind of understanding, I think scaling back a little bit, getting a really good, realistic understanding of like what is your actual capabilities and how can we start to make improvement based on those capabilities. And then as those capabilities improve, then we keep scaling up and stepping up, right? So you can still make it to a level 100, but you're not going to do it on day 1, so.
Yeah, I think it's a really good points that you had in there, in that thing about the three of us, where in the fitness, health, and wellness industry, but we don't eat perfectly all the time. No. But we eat consistently all the time, right? And I don't mean that in consistently eating food, but we eat your probably the diet and the quality of your nutrients is consistent. If you stepped out and looked at 12 months of what you're putting in your body, right? Yep. So absolutely. 85-90% of the time, it's going to be good stuff. The other 10, you're allowing yourself to have kind of whatever you want and whatever you want to treat yourself with. And it's just getting that concept, and for people to be able to understand and feel comfortable with that, that they'd actually be able to make some change and reach those goals. Yeah,
totally. And I think that comes with like time in the game, improved knowledge and understanding of nutrition as a whole and how it affects your body. I mean, I used to be in the same boat, right? Like, this has been an evolution for me as well. I probably started this, in I would say like 2008, so whatever that is, that's been 16 years or something like that. And I used to be one of those people who thought everything had to be perfect all the time, or else the wheels were going to fall off and everything was going to go bad. And then the more I actually learned, kind of got away from like the bro science and like reading bodybuilding.com articles and whatnot, and got a little more into like the actual science of things and how it all works, and then started to kind of like get a better understanding and a better trust in like my body and its ability to utilize food, right? Yeah. And kind of how that all works. Like, then I started to gain more trust, and then you gain a little bit of leeway, and then kind of the pressure comes off a little bit, and then everything gets a little bit easier, right? So I would say, even for me, like, it's been a constant evolution over the last 16 or whatever years it's been, and it's still an evolution, right? Because that's the crazy and the cool thing about like nutrition science is that it's constantly, in flux, and there's new information, and a lot of it's garbage, and there's some good stuff, and it's like trying to, weed through, and then also just, with life changes, right? Like, I'm not 20 years old anymore. I'm not a college or professional athlete. I'm, unfortunately, I'm like pushing 40 here. That's why
you can't tell.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's what I'm trying to prevent. But, so over the course of time, like, things change, right? And like, your goals change, your outlooks change, and also too the time and attention that you have to give to the approach changes. So you just got to be able to think on the fly. But I'm a huge believer, like, in that knowledge is power. That as long as we understand these fundamentals of like what are the things that are going to impact our nutrition in the most efficient way possible, depending on like how much time and effort we have to give, then we can always put our best foot forward, right? So it doesn't, I'm not, whatever, when I was a professional athlete, I was 2 hours practice in the morning, bike after practice, go home, eat, go to the gym for 2 hours. It was my job just to work out and be fit. Now I might get 60 to 90 minutes some days, and then I'm rushing on a train into the city, and I'm there till 8 o'clock at night. And my meals are sporadic. Sometimes I don't have dedicated meal times, but I still know like what is the framework for me to keep myself successful, and I can stick within that framework even though it may not be, you know, perfect or ideal. And I think that's something where so many people think that like, oh, everything has to line up just right, or they're doing it wrong, so there's no point or whatever, right? And I think that's kind of what we're, you know, trying to get away from with people, is just help them understand that no, like there's a specific framework that you can utilize that's going to fuel your goals no matter, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's just got to be, you know, following along, you know, a specific kind of set of things that research has shown that is going to be most impactful for the body, right?
Yeah, and that's, I feel like it's getting caught up in not the immediate fix for things. It's the long-term lifestyle, something that you can just live with, be successful, and then manipulate on either end as you go. So that was kind of like my next question with that, right? You hear people say, I'm going to cut, but when I want to drop weight, I just cut carbs out.
Yep.
And it's great. And I lose weight. And I feel great, right? And then it's like, I want to, no one really says they want to gain weight a lot of the time, right? Or performance-based, right?
Yep.
Some of these athletes, NFL guys, genetic freaks are, right? Who was the, was it Chad Johnson, right? Ocho Cinco used to eat like McDonald's every week, or like Terrell Owens or something, right? Like every game, every single.
Yeah. Chad Johnson still eats
Yeah,
McDonald's every
literally,
day.
right?
Yeah.
And
There was something also about, if you guys know, the receiver for the
DK
Seahawks,
Metcalf.
DK, just says there was something that came out. He has like a cup of coffee, one meal, and then he just has candy.
Yeah, 2 bags
the rest
of
the
candy,
day.
yeah.
But also, this is that there are levels, right? To genetics, and obviously you're talking about quality, right, of food. The quality that he's putting in his body is not great. But also, there's a different level to that man's genetics and the way that his body can produce muscle and produce power, right, like this. So we're not all as fortunate.
Yeah, I'd say he's 1 in a billion kind
Yeah,
of character.
exactly.
Right? Yeah, I mean, you look at that guy; he's a total freak of nature. But yeah, that's the thing, right? It's like, yeah, there are those few outliers always, right? But I think for the large majority of us, you know, regular human beings, like that, you know, there's definitely kind of a specific framework that, you know, when we kind of pull those levers more often, it's going to work better in our favor, you know. And like I said, even over the course of, which is, it's insane to say it, but I'm, well into the thousands at this point of like people that I've been able to coach and talk with and things about nutrition. And yeah, it's just, you know, when I look at like the body of like the, I guess like the evidence that I've been able to kind of be a part of, yeah, there's definitely some things that, you know, those are those specific levers we can pull. And I would say even for you, like, or even to kind of go back to your question, like even if people want to gain weight or things like, it's like they're still looking to add muscle and performance. There's not
no one's looking to add fat.
Right. Like everybody's searching for something similar, right? Like if your goal is weight loss, you're probably trying to improve your body composition. You're probably trying to decrease your fat mass and increase your muscle mass. If your goal is weight gain, you're probably still trying to increase your fat mass and just maybe increase your muscle mass and maintain your fat mass, or, you know, try to keep it, you know, down as much as we can. The goal is for 99% of people in this world, especially in the fitness space, right? Like, we're all pretty similar. Like, everybody wants that improved composition, whether they know it or not. Most people will say they want to lose 10 pounds. They don't. They want to look 10 pounds different. That's what I always say. Whether that's gain or lose, right? They just want to look and feel and function 10 pounds differently. And I think that's and that's where we can kind of start to pull on those levers like we spoke about, of like different, you know, where do we focus our attention with different macronutrients and different food groups and things like that to make sure that we can, you know, essentially create the goal that whatever it is that they're trying to create.
Yeah. So if we can give some kind of some insight, right? If you're talking to someone that comes to you, they're looking for a recomp, they want to cut. Kind of how do you work with them? What insight, what information you're going to give them for that? What process?
Totally, yeah. So recomp and cut, I mean, so number one, no matter what we're doing, protein is going to be the thing, right? So I'm a believer in high protein. I'm going to usually try to push about 1 gram per pound of people's body weight. Or if they're a little on the heavier side and they're at a caloric deficit, then I would try to get them at about 35% of their daily calorie intake coming from protein. So, you know, anywhere from, I would say, I try not to go below 0.8 grams per pound of somebody's body weight for protein. So that's usually where I start. And then I literally go to volume, right? So that's where plant-based foods is coming into play. So I really like to focus in on fruit. I like to focus in on vegetables, and I really like to focus in on, most people want to cut carbs. I actually think we want to find a place where we can add these in.
Yeah.
Because I think the huge place, or the huge place that people are making mistakes when it comes to finding longevity and an ability to like improve on their body comp, right? Do a cut, increase some muscle mass, decrease some fat mass, is like the energy level's got to be there, right? So if we pull the carbs out, yeah, we've pulled out the calories, right? So maybe we've put ourselves in a position where we can decrease some fat mass, but we've taken out our energy source, right? So if we want to then be in the gym and we want to be lifting weights, now we've put ourselves into a tough spot. It's like, okay, like I'm at my calorie deficit, but I've also pulled away the food that's going to provide the energy that I need in the gym. So now I can't work out at the intensity level that I need to work out to create the change or the adaptation that I'm trying to change. So that's where I'm going to take a higher carb, a little bit of a lower fat approach, right? So usually what I'll try to get people to do is get up about 1 gram per pound of their body weight in protein, do about 20 to 25% of their calories from fats, just so that we can keep like hormones running normally and brain function and all that stuff. We don't want to go below 20% basically with dietary fat. And then we fill the rest with high quality carbohydrate and like these volume based foods, right? Because we still got to be at our calorie deficit. So calories are the king in the equation, but we want to focus on our high protein. We want to make sure we've got enough fats to keep your physical function going, and then we want to see how many carbohydrates we can eat so that we can keep the energy levels and performance levels high. And then you're going to see probably a much more improved like just outcome, right, in terms of like increasing your muscle mass and keeping energy levels high while you're at a calorie deficit. And then that's also where these volume-based foods come in, right? So that's where I love to plug in vegetables and berries and other fruits and things like that, is just because the quantities of those we can eat are so much higher than, it's like, okay, I can have a handful of nuts, or I can have, a pound of vegetables and, throw some berries in there or whatever. For a lot of us, we probably would do better with a little bit more volume. And then also too, from a nutrient standpoint, we'd probably get a little bit more nutrition out of that as well, just because of the sheer volume of the food that we're consuming. So that's usually the kind of the place I would start with that. If I was going into a cut, I would really, kind of to lay it out step by step, is I would get a really good understanding of like, what is the level of caloric intake that you need. I wouldn't really go crazy low, right? Because again, you're just going to sabotage the adaptation that you're trying to create, which is building muscle mass, right? If we go too low with calories, we're not going to be able to build muscle mass, and we're also going to run into energy issues, sleep issues, whatever, hunger, mood, cravings, you name it, it's all going to probably go south. And if we keep that up long enough, it can even run into bigger problems, hormones or whatever. So I'd like to stay, around that 15% calorie deficit, probably below maintenance. Get the high protein in there, get the 20% fats in there, and then get the rest with, volume-based, nice complex carbohydrates, some simple carbs before a workout for some extra energy.
Cool.
Any additional, I guess, support on how long someone should target being in a cut if they actually are going to try to do one for an aesthetic reason?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's one of those, depending on what you have to lose and everything, the timeline would change. But in terms of like staying in the calorie deficit, usually what I do is I try to, and this is why I like to kind of work with people individually on this and like have a nice little back and forth, is that you don't want to overstay your welcome in that deficit. So basically what I'll do with people is we'll keep them in that deficit until you start to see like diminishing returns, or you feel like you've overstayed your welcome. So that's where like the biofeedback comes into play, where it's like, okay, yeah, like I don't know if I'm not losing weight at the rate I had been losing, or my composition's not changing as much. I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm grumpy, my sleep is off, just feeling like, things are starting to go south for me. That's generally when we could take a little bit of time and maybe increase the calories a little bit and see if we can't increase and improve all of those biofeedbacks. Because then, again, like to me, the big thing about like calorie deficits and things like that, especially, this is specifically for people who are training, is that I would way rather have somebody eat 200 to 300 more calories a day and have 200 to 300 more calories of output.
Yeah.
Because you're going
Totally.
to like your results from that are going to be so much better.
Yeah.
Your how you feel physically, how you function mentally, like all of these things, they'll be so greatly improved from better workouts and more activity. Then so usually what I like to focus on with people is like, I don't love these crazy calorie deficits. I'll actually challenge people to like, hey, let's keep you at like the amount of calories where you feel good, you feel fed, and you feel comfortable. But like, let's push it in the gym. So like, let's create that 200 to 300 calorie deficit by going for a walk tonight for 30 to 45 minutes, right? Let's stay in the gym for an extra 20 minutes and hit an extra couple sets of whatever on whatever you're doing, and create that adaptation that way. Because just what I found with people, it's like, there's a serious rate limiter in just continually reducing calories. It's like, all right, you're going to go from 2,000 to 1,700, from 1,700 to 1,500, 15 to 12.
Point.
Right, like where are you going to keep going with
a
that?
smaller box with no room to actually work.
I like that, and we heard you say that on the webinar, in that trying to, I'd rather you eat 200 more calories, burn 200 more off, because then you'll have the energy to kind of fuel your body. Because I feel like on the other side, there's such a big, and obviously we probably say it to people as well, is like, right, you can't outwork a bad diet. But this is in the confine of you're in you have a good nutrition plan, right, and you're eating good foods. I'd rather you have the energy to work. And I think that's such a big message that we try to pass on to people here, that you can't, it's going to be a race to the bottom if you just go the other way.
Exactly.
Right? And at some point your body's going to be like, well, I work at 1,100 calories, and you now have to eat 900 if you want to lose weight.
Exactly.
And it's not going to be the body you want, right? And you're not going to be able to get there or sustain it.
No, that's totally right. And you hit it on the head where it's like, and it's not going to be the body you want, because at some point you're not providing the ability for your body to put on any kind of muscle mass or change like its composition. Like, like it can get maybe a little smaller, we can get a few pounds off or whatever, but nothing's really changing, and only really what's happening is it's just getting like less efficient or more inefficient, really, and it's just going to make your life way harder, right? So I think that's the thing with a lot of people, where it's like, rather than doing that crazy calorie deficit, you go in a slighter deficit, you try to push a little bit of extra with the exercise and the output, and then you're also you're improving your muscle mass, you're improving your energy levels, you're improving your nourishment, you're improving like your ability to continue making great progress all the way down the line, instead of, like you said, it's a race to the bottom, and you're doing the opposite. And it's just like, at that point, we're just waiting for like, all right, well, when am I going to crash and burn and just be totally like fucked, basically, and then have to basically build yourself back up to
then start over again.
Do that.
So we have that conversation a lot with like the runner's mindset, or just the pure cardio class, right? Cycling type of mindset. At least there's like more leg stimulation of muscle with like a big resistance on a bike or something. But we have that where it's like they're putting themselves into this incrementally smaller box, or just trading calories instead of utilizing them to build their machine to eventually have a bigger output from their machine, right? To allow themselves to use that 200 to 300 calories of output to enhance what they want to be, and instead of the 10-pound loss, it's maybe a 2-pound gain. Right? And they look and feel so much better. Right? I had one specific question, if you could, because it's a big overlooked, I feel like, macronutrient, which is fats. A lot of people don't take that into account. I've heard people over years, even this kid I remember in high school was trying to like cut weight and trim. He was like an athlete at the time, but he was trying to just like eat chicken and broccoli. With no basis of carbohydrates, no rice, no nothing, and no basis of fats. Obviously a young kid, but people in general too don't see dietary fats as a thing, or they're getting very poor fat content from these highly processed oils or things, right? And people also don't see the difference of fats when you talk about protein sources. If you're eating a ribeye versus a filet mignon, let's say, right? Totally different macronutrient profiles. Because of the fat content, right? But people don't even think that way. So what's a huge detriment of not having fats in your diet? You spoke on hormones. What else are fats kind of good for other than an energy source? Like, how does that system work?
Totally, I mean, like you said, nice little slow burning energy source. That's kind of the main thing. And then just from a hormonal and like a neurological standpoint, right? So like, I mean, obviously fats are, they're the things that are going to help your body create hormones, right? So we got to make sure we have adequate fat for that. Fats also, they create like a protective sheath around like axons in the body, so they send like neurological signals, right? So as we're sending signals around the body, there's like a fat sheath that kind of protects that, right, and make sure the signals send. So that's a huge one there as well. And then just from like an energy availability, well, even just like hair, skin, nails, right? Like people's hair, skin will dry out and hair will become brittle and things like that when they don't have adequate dietary fats. So yeah, it's just like the body needs them to function, right? And if you think about it, it's like, your brain is significantly made of fat. There's, fatty acids kind of cruising around all over the body that are providing energy and things like that. So those are kind of the main functions that the dietary fats are going to provide. But yeah, from like a sources standpoint, I think like you said there, right? Like a lot of people don't pay attention to that, or it's the easy thing to remove or whatever when people are trying to go on a diet. Now, I mean, back in the day, like when I first started kind of getting into like fitness space back like mid 2000s kind of thing, like that was the enemy, right? Like
fat-free,
Atkins diet,
fat-free crackers, fat-free milk, fat-free.
If it said fat-free, like I would buy it. Like Special K chips were huge. Like I'd buy all the Special K products because it specifically said fat-free on the box. Crazy. Or I'd buy like cereal because there was no fat, right? So yeah, that's one of those things where I pulled that out actually from my diet because same thing. I was just trying to get as lean and shredded as I could get. And it worked, but also too, like my physical, like physiological function kind of hit the tanks there for a while. So it wasn't the best. And then you start to realize, okay, yeah, like in terms of like hormonal support and even like anti-inflammatory properties and things like that, we need fats for a lot of different functions throughout the body. So, and again, it's like where are we getting them from, right? So that's where whole foods are going to come back into play. So if you're getting the majority of your fats from fatty meats and, processed foods, that's the exact opposite of what I would recommend. Still want to pay attention. I know now, like with the whole like, eat more meat, eat more fatty meat, eat more saturated fat, all that stuff. I mean, still the research shows that like it's not going to probably be really beneficial in terms of like heart health and things like that. So I do try to keep, for my recommendations to people, we try to keep the animal saturated fat low. So I'm always recommending, very lean proteins for people. We try to keep, these processed fats out and just processed foods in general, right? Where they're going to have all these hydrogenated oils and things like that. So like baked goods and cookies and chips and crackers and all this stuff. Try to keep that low. And then really where we want to increase is like our mono and polyunsaturated fats. And so that's going to be in the form of like nuts, seeds, olive oils, avocados. And then, we do need some saturated fat in the diet. And that's a big one for hormone production. So that's where I go more for like avocado, coconut, those types of things for some saturated fat intake there as well.
What's your take on dairy? I know you've said that you're lactose intolerant, right? I saw that story you posted.
For the ones that can tolerate.
He's like, I'm not doing this.
That could be the post that got the most interest ever was when I said I was having that bowl of yogurt. But you know what? I actually recently have changed my mind on dairy. So I'm still not going to recommend like full fat dairy because it's still going to be higher in saturated fat, higher in calories, that type of thing, right? So I would usually recommend like a low fat or non-fat dairy just because it's great protein. It's a great protein source. And for a lot of people too, you wouldn't believe, now with my new position I'm in here at this a different job, I get an opportunity to look at people's like DEXA scans like all day long. Cool. And the amount of people that have low bone mineral density is insane, right?
Wow.
So yeah, it actually like kind of changed my mind on probably we might need to do a little bit more dairy because it is such a rich source of calcium and phosphorus and things that can help just minerals that'll help build some bone. But then it's also a really nice protein source. And also too, not for nothing, is like when people are trying to get a gram per pound of their body weight in protein, most people don't love just eating chicken and beef and
it's an easier way to have a glass or yogurt or something like that.
Yeah, it's just way better for variety, I think, for people. So as long as they're not lactose intolerant, right, then I'm actually in favor of it, but I wouldn't be doing it for the fat.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we spoke right on the kind of the cutting side, right? I can understand just the opposite of that, going to bulking, right? Kind of shifting that a little bit. Yep. So coming into summer though, we've got people that are probably running 5Ks, maybe run half marathons. How do you feel about someone thinking about their nutrition kind of for performance? So what should I do for myself in order to be really good for the marathon I'm going to run in November, or a half or a half marathon I'm going to run this August, right? If I'm looking 4 weeks, 6 weeks out or so.
Totally. Yeah. And this is an interesting one because it's a hard line for those people that are more like they're not professionals, like they're just kind of, they're weekend warriors, or like you said, they've got a 5K or they want to run a half marathon. So like they're not 100% performance focused. They're going to be aesthetically driven. It's probably more aesthetically driving them to like, hey, I want to look a little better, so if I sign up for this 5K or this half marathon, like I'll run more and I'll get leaner or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think, so like in that case, like if it's strictly performance for somebody who's like more athletically focused, then, we do what we got to do to provide the most energy. And it's funny, like you said, about certain athletes and stuff and, not looking the part, right? And someone mentioned this after that NBA All-Star game, and they were like, you look at like the top few NBA players, and they're all just like, they're not fit, they look sloppy, like Jokic, it's all those are white guys, but like their bodies are like just like not that great, but they're like dominating basketball. Or and even like you mentioned like a lot of the baseball players, they're bigger guys, they're not super lean, right? But
even like a CC Sabathia for the Yanks back in the day, right? He actually, his performance, obviously mass moves faster, moves objects faster, right? So him, I remember one off season, right? His thing was what, Captain Crunch or something, right? He dropped like 35 or 40 or even 50 pounds maybe in an off season, and he had like the worst season of his career. And you look at that and you're like, oh, this is interesting, but he still has the cardio capacity to last a 9-inning game, throwing 100, right? Like it's very interesting.
Totally.
It's like, do you see that picture of Patrick Mahomes when they were celebrating after the Super Bowl? Like I think it could have been an angle thing, and like if you're listening, he probably looked great, brother. But it just like it like went viral, right? That like he just didn't look great, like. But nor does Tom Brady, right? With this, right? That's not, these guys aren't building for aesthetics, right?
No,
so you're building for performance, and whatever exercise they have on them probably helps them take a tackle and helps them throw a ball.
Well, and that's exactly right, and like and it's like a huge piece for like longevity and energy availability. Like I'm a hockey guy, so like Phil Kessel's like the hockey guy where like his body was terrible. He looks like a 40-year-old dad basically at this point. But he's got the Ironman streak. He played like 1,300 games in a row. Guy never got hurt. Fast, shoots the puck hard, like plays a great game. And that's the thing, right? So like and even I got caught up with this when I was in sports, is like I thought I had to look like a bodybuilder to be an athlete. And if I could go back in time, I actually would have eaten more and I wouldn't have got so lean, because it actually, like you're going to hit a level of leanness where it actually, you're going to sacrifice performance, whether it's like power output or strength or all of the above, energy levels for sure, because you're trying to be super lean and look jacked. Whereas like, you could be 12 to 15% body fat, and I would say that's probably more along the, you want to live in that world of probably around 15, and then you've got plenty of resiliency, you've got plenty of strength, you've got plenty of energy availability, and so I mean that's kind of off on a tangent, but that's kind of what I think about now. Like the ideal athlete would probably be somebody that could live in like that 15-ish% body fat range and just function really well and recover really well and stuff. But yeah, when it comes to people from like the more just like weekend warrior type of thing, or just trying to fuel better for runs and stuff like this as we approach spring, I think if your goal is still like weight management, then it really becomes about like what are you doing pre, during, and post your exercise, right? So we're still going to need some caloric management. I would say we definitely want to go more, like if performance is kind of still the main goal, but you want to look good while you're doing it, I would say opt or aim more for like right around your maintenance level. Keep the protein up there at 0.8 to a gram per pound of body weight. Keep your fats around 20%, but then really what we want to do is we really want to dial in our carbohydrate intake, pre, during, and post your exercise, right? So from that standpoint, like I think it's a pretty safe bet to say like most people would do great with like 50 to 75 grams of carbohydrate before they go into the gym or into a run or whatever. You're probably fine to just ride that workout out, like running off of the pre-workout carbohydrate, unless you're running or doing something for beyond 90 minutes. At that point, I would try to maybe do another 50 to 70 grams of carbohydrate after that 1 hour mark to get yourself past the 90 minutes into the 2 hour range, and that you're going to have more energy availability at that point. Just restore some glycogen and some fast energy, right? And then again, after the workout, I would go with another probably 50 to 75 grams of carbohydrate. So someone on the smaller side, or someone who maybe is trying to consume a little bit less carbohydrate, go with 50. If you're on the larger side and you've got room for it in your diet, right, then go 75 or beyond, right? And I think the good thing about that is, with a lot of people kind of fearing carbohydrate and whatever, we put it in before, we use it, and then we put it in after, and the body will soak it back up so that we have usable energy, the next day or later on in the day when we want to go out and be active again, right? So that's a nice way where we can use that pre, intra, and post-workout fueling opportunity to, have a little bit more leeway, and also, fuel your goals like in a more positive way as well, rather than just trying to be restrictive like all the time,
Yeah, no, I even talk to clients sometimes, especially early morning clients that I have that might not eat enough. Had a conversation literally yesterday of just like, what are you eating the night before? If you're, because they do specifically a couple train at 5:30 twice a week in the morning, right? So they're not getting anything in typically. Really can't eat, struggle to eat early. Like they just don't want food. They feel almost nauseous eating it that early, right when they wake up, but they're right into the workout. So it's like they can tell the difference between if they have something. It's almost like, right, don't eat past 8 o'clock. It's like these people might need to eat right before they go to bed, because they're getting up and getting right in the gym, so they actually have the stored fuels, which is really interesting. Another point I wanted to make was young athletes. I've had conversations where it's like I've had a couple of younger kids in here, right, teenagers trying to perform, but they're fixated on like the Instagram bodybuilding look of like, I want to get lean. I'm like, you're 157 pounds, and you're trying to
play outside linebacker,
compete in your sport, right? It's like, let's step back and take a look at this. But no, it's all huge, huge.
Yeah, that's the hard thing. Like, luckily, I didn't have that type of like distraction, when I was young. And like I said, even I got just into whatever, I guess the internet was around obviously at that point, Facebook or whatever, but like, you get into reading bodybuilding articles and things like that, and it's like, if I was smart enough to realize, like, dude, you're not a bodybuilder, you're a hockey player, like I should have been reading hockey nutrition, or for these guys, read football nutrition, follow their favorite football players, follow the people that they're trying to emulate, don't follow the most ripped and jacked dude who's like, we know what he's doing anyway on the side. Because it's just, that's the thing, right? I think that's the interesting thing, that it's really hard to understand it. It's like, until you've kind of gone through it or you've lived through it, it's like, everybody wants to think that, the most shredded dude, who's the guy on the Yankees that came from Florida?
Stanton.
Stanton. The guy shows up, he's totally shredded and he's hurt all the time, and it's like, who knows, right? Like, maybe it doesn't make a big difference, but maybe if he was a little bit, had a little bit more energy availability, a little bit less, or a little bit more body fat, was able to be a little bit more resilient and recover. You just never know, right? Yeah. So I think that's the important thing, is like, when it comes from a performance standpoint, there's definitely levels to that, right? Like, it's like, you're going to hit a point where if you're overly fat, you're not going to feel so good when you're doing your exercise. Then you're going to hit this probably mid-range of body fatness and good amount of lean mass, where you're going to feel amazing all the time. And then you're going to want to take it to that next level of being super lean. And then you have to understand that your performance and your energy levels and your sleep and things like that are going to end up suffering at some point, right? And I think, like, you guys are in this as well. You said you just finished a bulk and stuff. Like, you probably feel better, that, like, if you go between the two, it's like you feel amazing right now. By summertime, you're going to show up at the gym some days, your energy's going to be low. There's going to be nights where you're so hungry you can't control yourself. Like, it's just not the easiest way to live if you're trying to live super lean, right? So
and I think that's a great point and great kind of way to put it together, because as we talk about goals and how you're aligning your nutrition with your goals, it's first understanding what your actual goal is, right? So if you're trying to show abs and this is an aesthetic phase for you, you also, right, you have to eat for that, right? But if you're trying to train for performance and you want to be a great football player and you're trying to have as much energy to optimize for a race, right? You got to know that maybe you need to take in a little bit more, and you're not gonna be as lean as you want to be at that point in time. But it's understanding the goal and then eating, right? And having the nutrition to support that goal.
Totally. Yeah, no, and that's what it always becomes about, right? It's like, do you actually have are you using the right tool for the job, right?
Yep.
Like, what is your strategy? And I think that's one thing where, just over the course of time and learning and understanding this stuff more, that's where, like, and I think, like I mentioned at the beginning, like I've been able to calm down about things. It's like, I'm like pretty lean. Like I, walk around with a 6-pack and whatever. I'm not that strong.
Yeah.
And like, the two don't work that well together, right? It's like, all right, yeah, I give up strength for a level of leanness. I feel like I'm strong enough to like walk around and get the job done, lifting up my backpack every day to go to work. But no, so that's the thing, right? Where it's like, you really do have to have the proper strategy for the goal, and I think that's what everybody's missing. Everybody's just like trying to take the same nutrition approach to do 30 different things, or like never deciding on one, right? And then this is where we kind of just get lost in the mix and things go south for a lot of people. So that's the hugest thing, is like, if you can actually figure out like what is your goal, and then you need to understand like what is the strategy that's going to fuel that goal and then you go all in on it, then the goal can change. Like for you did a bulk, all right, now the goal will change and you'll do a cut, and the approach will change, but you have the understanding of like what are the the things that are going to happen.
I have to give up my heavy deadlift in the summer, right, and chase it again in the winter.
Exactly. Yeah. Totally.
I'm just body of a power lifter, strength of a bodybuilder. So I feel pretty energized all the time and don't really worry about it.
It's all good. Hey, whatever works for you. Right?
Adam, we appreciate you, man. Appreciate you spending some time to go a little deeper, right, into kind of goals and aligning nutrition to support those. Anywhere you want to point people, right, again, towards you, to see some more information, to work with you.
Get in contact,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for contact. I mean, Instagram is where I do the majority of my social media stuff, or pretty much all of it at this point. So that is nutrition coach, all one word, _Adam. That's a great place to find me. And then also my website is arnutrition.net. So people can look me up there. Again, I always tell people like, Instagram's an easy place to get a hold of people nowadays. So if anybody ever has any questions or anything like that, they can just hit me up on Instagram. And also too, if you go on my profile or whatever, I've got some like free fat loss trainings, and I've got a bunch of, some free little gifts or whatever for people if they want to grab that stuff and get a bit of an introduction to me and my nutrition approach, and also some like good information in terms of like kind of how to eat in alignment with trying to create that body that people are trying to create. So
cool. Great. Awesome.
Thank you, man.
Thanks,
appreciate
guys.
the time.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah.